Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Office Hours with the Professor. As always, I'm your host, William the Professor Collis, and I am super excited for this week's Office Hours. This is actually another news story that I've been following. I've had pegged for a while, and we're finally going to talk about it on the podcast. It is Metaverse Regulations. So get ready. Now, there's been all sorts of news stories and sort of articles about this. I actually thought Holland and Knight had a pretty good resource on this. But essentially, what's going on is that the EU, South Korea, Japan have all sort of said they're looking at potential policy regulations around the metaverse. And the EU and South Korea's announcements are sort of the most recent, basically coming within weeks of each other. And while there's not really any specific policy or regulatory actions outlined right now, it's sort of more of a broad strokes. We're just looking at this thing, stay tuned. There are some interesting things, comments made that sort of characterize, I think, these announcements. One is a general theme of national competitiveness. The need to look at regulations here can affect the future of the economy of the countries themselves. And I also think secondary, and South Korea says this sort of explicitly in their announcement, there's a sense that the current regulatory framework that exists, and in South Korea's case, they even say the current regulatory framework for video games is probably insufficient to address what's coming for the metaverse. So I wanted to talk about these amorphous, undefined metaverse regulations on today's podcast. And here's why I wanted to talk about it, because I think this is nothing less than the future of society itself. And I think there's three very big reasons why it's important countries look at this. The first is there's just massive economic potential here. It's a little bit of hyperbole, but it's sort of like infinite new land was discovered within your national borders, right? I mean, that's sort of what you can do with AR, VR worlds. So just even that sort of very hackneyed example gives you a sense of the economic potential here that sort of is on the table. I think the second piece is clear guidelines here can really create a source of national advantage. There's enough uncertainty. I mean, can we even really define what the metaverse is, right? Everybody talks about it in a slightly different way. There's enough uncertainty. Some clear guidelines about the space, I think, is really going to be a draw for businesses. And then the third reason why I think it's important that countries look at this is the ones doing it early will have a relatively large advantage because their neighbors are going to have to take into account their policies and either set policy, ape policy, or adjust policy in light of what already exists. So basically, by going first, nations can help sort of set the national debate. So I think this is great that this is being looked at. The problem, of course, is this is sort of too slow. They've already announced something is happening, and I'm already like, well, it just needs to be faster. But it goes back to that uncertainty point, is now there's even more uncertainty in the space. Countries are looking at this, but the direction as to how the metaverse might be adjusted or regulated is not yet clear. That's sort of more unsettling than not looking at it at all, right? There's potentially a change coming as a business or as a country or as an entity. But I think this is a huge news story and an important one to follow. I think it's really exciting. I give it a B because it's very interesting, very fascinating, but we're just in the early innings here, and I wish there were more details. But we will definitely be revisiting this on future episodes of Office Hours with the Professor. So that's why you should tune in every week, including next week. So thank you so much again, and I look forward to the next Office Hours with you guys.